When you think about adding camera movement to a video, the first thing that usually comes to mind is a traditional camera slider. And while sliders can produce beautiful results, they also take up quite a lot of space. The NEEWER DL400 takes a completely different approach. Instead of moving the camera along a fixed rail, this is a compact motorized camera dolly that moves directly across a flat surface. That means you can create smooth tracking shots without setting up a large slider every time you want a little movement in your scene. And for product videos, studio work, B-roll, time lapses, and even creative indoor shots, that can be extremely useful. This is the upgraded version of the DL400, and NEEWER has packed quite a lot into a relatively small system. One thing I immediately like about this kit is that it feels complete. NEEWER includes the DL400 itself, an NPF 750 style rechargeable battery, a USB Type-C cable, a ball head, a smartphone holder, and an action camera adapter. So whether you're shooting with a mirrorless camera, a GoPro-style action camera, or even a smartphone, you already have most of what you need inside the package, and everything comes inside a proper protective carrying case. That may sound like a small detail, but for camera equipment like this, I really appreciate it. You can keep the dolly, battery, and all the smaller accessories together instead of searching through different drawers every time you want to use it. The DL400 itself feels much more substantial than I expected. It weighs around 1.7 kilograms, so it has enough mass to stay planted while moving, but it is still compact enough to carry around without turning it into another large piece of production equipment. The maximum supported payload is up to 3 kilograms. That gives you enough capacity for many mirrorless camera setups, action cameras, smartphones, and relatively compact camera and lens combinations. There is a standard 1/4-inch mounting point on top, which is exactly what you want from something like this because you are not locked into one particular camera system. You can install a camera directly, use the supplied ball head, attach an action camera adapter, or build a slightly more complicated setup using your own accessories, and that flexibility is probably one of the strongest points of this design. Instead of being a tool that only works for one very specific type of shot, the DL400 can become another small camera platform that you adapt to whatever you are filming that day. Power comes from the included NPF-style battery, which is another decision I really like. These batteries are extremely common in video production, and according to NEEWER, the supplied battery can provide up to around 5 hours of operation. Once everything is powered on, the basic idea becomes immediately clear. You put the dolly on a suitable surface, mount your camera, choose the movement you want, and let the motors do the work. There are 5 different speed levels available directly from the controls on the unit, and having several speeds is important because camera movement can completely change the feeling of a shot. For a dramatic product shot, I normally prefer something slow and controlled. If you are following an object, creating a reveal, or simply want more noticeable movement, you can increase the speed. The 5 levels range from very slow movement at around 1 minute per meter to the fastest setting at around 15 seconds per meter, so there is quite a lot of room to adjust the character of your shot without changing the rest of the setup. The movement comes from an ultra-quiet dual motor system driving the front wheels. NEEWER rates the operating noise at below 30 decibels, which is especially useful if you are shooting in a studio or recording sound at the same time. The wheels are covered with rubber, giving the dolly better grip on smooth surfaces, and the front wheels can be adjusted to change the direction of travel. This is where the DL400 becomes much more interesting than a simple motorized platform. You are not limited to perfectly straight movement. By changing the wheel angle, you can create straight paths, gentle arcs, or circular movement around a subject. The front wheels can be adjusted approximately 30 degrees in either direction. For product filmmaking, that opens up a lot of possibilities. You could slowly move past a product on a table, create a reveal from behind another object, move toward a subject, move away from it, or create an arc that gives the shot much more depth. And because there are no rails underneath the camera, the dolly itself can travel much farther than a conventional compact slider, as long as you have a reasonably smooth surface available. You can control the basic movement directly from the buttons, but there is also wireless control through the NEEWER mobile app. The app provides manual control as well as dedicated live video and time-lapse modes. You can configure things like direction, distance, and movement behavior, and presets can also be saved for future use. That becomes especially useful when the camera is positioned somewhere that you do not want to touch during the shot. The supplied ball head makes the system even more practical. Without it, the camera basically follows the orientation of the top mounting platform. With the ball head installed, you can quickly change your composition, tilt the camera, or rotate it into a completely different position. The head provides full rotation as well as up to a 90-degree tilt, so you have much more freedom when positioning the camera. And for me, this is probably the configuration I would use most often. With a small action camera, the DL400 becomes incredibly easy to use. The overall setup is light, compact, and very stable, and you can place it in locations where using a normal camera slider would simply be inconvenient. You can create low-angle tracking shots, move through a room, follow objects, or use the dolly purely for smooth cinematic B-roll. And because action cameras are so small, you can experiment much more freely with camera position. But of course, the more interesting test is using a larger mirrorless cinema camera. My Sony FX30 is considerably heavier than an action camera, especially once a lens is installed, but this is still well within the maximum payload of the DL400. And this is the type of setup that matters to me personally, because I want a tool like this to work with the cameras I actually use for professional product videos. And now you can see the actual footage recorded by the Sony FX30 while it was riding on the DL400. For this shot, I deliberately disabled the stabilization in the camera. I wanted the movement you see here to come from the dolly itself, rather than having the camera electronically compensate for it. And I think the result demonstrates the most important thing about this product. The movement looks controlled. Instead of a completely static frame, there is a slow change in perspective, and that immediately gives the shot more depth. As the camera moves toward the fireplace, objects closer to the lens shift against the background, creating natural parallax. And that is exactly why camera movement is so powerful. Even a relatively simple scene can suddenly look much more cinematic when the camera moves through physical space instead of simply zooming digitally into an image. Of course, the quality of the result will always depend on the surface. This is a wheeled dolly, so a perfectly smooth table or floor will naturally give you the best result. Small bumps, joints, or uneven surfaces can transfer movement into the camera, but on the right surface, the DL400 is capable of producing some really attractive shots. And you are not limited to working inside a studio. If you have a suitable smooth surface outdoors, the same system can also be used outside. This is where the compact design becomes particularly useful. There are no rails to assemble, no long slider to carry around, and no tripod at each end. You simply need enough space for the dolly to travel. That makes it very easy to experiment. You can try a shot, adjust the wheel direction or speed, change your composition, and immediately try something completely different. After spending some time with the NEEWER DL400, I think its biggest advantage is not any single technical feature. It is simply how easy it makes adding movement to a shot. A traditional slider is still a fantastic filmmaking tool, and there are situations where rails are absolutely the better solution, but they require space, they require setup, and the maximum travel distance is determined by the physical length of the slider. The DL400 removes many of those limitations. Put it on a smooth surface, mount your camera, choose your direction and speed, and you can start creating moving shots almost immediately. The 5 speed levels give you good control over the pace of the movement. The adjustable wheels allow both straight and curved paths. The ball head gives you plenty of freedom with camera positioning and support for mirrorless cameras. Action cameras and smartphones makes this much more versatile than it might initially appear. I particularly like it for product filmmaking. When you are shooting B-roll, you often want just a little movement, a slow push toward a product, a smooth move from one detail to another, a wide shot with subtle parallax, or a longer tracking shot that would be difficult to achieve with a short conventional slider. And this little dolly can do all of those things. It is also one of those pieces of equipment that encourages experimentation. Once it is sitting next to your camera, you start seeing shots where you normally would have left the camera completely static. And sometimes that small amount of movement is exactly what makes a shot look finished. So overall, I think NEEWER has created a very useful filmmaking tool with the DL400. It is compact, well-built, surprisingly powerful for its size, easy to operate, and versatile enough to work with everything from a small action camera to a proper mirrorless cinema setup. And most importantly, the footage it produces can genuinely add another level of production value to a video. If you make product reviews, cinematic B-roll, studio videos, time lapses, or any type of content where controlled camera movement is important, the DL400 is definitely an interesting tool to have in your kit. As always, I will leave more information about the NEEWER DL400 in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more detailed reviews and filmmaking gear, and I will see you in the next video.